Good evening. Welcome to Left, Right and Centre. I'm Vishnu Shom. Another big day for transparency in the country, with the Supreme Court making it clear that the State Bank of India had to supply all data to the Election Commission on electoral bonds. There can be no exceptions. In other words, any alphanumeric codes which link companies or individuals who bought bonds with the political parties which received these bonds and encashed them rather must now be made public. And this data should be available on Thursday. It was an interesting day in court with heated arguments which resulted in the Chief Justice and other judges, and remember it's a 5-judge constitution bench, sternly warning some of the lawyers to settle down or potentially face action. Also on the show tonight, after his landslide win in the presidential election in Russia, what many say was a foregone conclusion, Vladimir Putin has raised the spectre of World War III as ties between Russia and the West plummet to their deepest crisis since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. Putin has repeatedly warned that the use of nuclear weapons is not off the table if Russia is threatened. These comments come at a time when the French president a month back said that he could not rule out the deployment of French soldiers in Ukraine if required. And finally, our newsmaker on the program, the Israeli Nobel Prize winner Ada Yonath, who won the 2009 award for chemistry along with Venki Ramakrishnan for a pioneering work on the structure of ribosomes, a key part of the machinery of our cells. Her work, which has helped prove the efficacy of antibiotics, has been remarkable. She's the first woman from the Middle East to win the Nobel in chemistry, the first woman from the Middle East to win a Nobel in sciences. But first, our top story. The Supreme Court today directed the State Bank of India to disclose all details related to electoral bonds that allowed individuals and companies to make donations to political parties. This must include the serial number of each bond, is what the 5-judge bench headed by the Chief Justice said. I'm joined now by the former Chief Election Commissioner of India, Dr. SBI Qureshi. Thanks, sir, very much for being with us. An interesting quote from the Chief Justice, who said, the SBI's attitude seems to be, you tell us what to disclose, we will then disclose. That does not seem to be fair. When we say all details, it includes all conceivable data. This is what the Chief Justice said. Does this now mean that we will now finally get that data or that link between corporates funding and political parties which have encashed these bonds?
Yes, indeed. In fact, it was very surprising to see SBI is still dragging its feet. They should have seen the writing on the wall. That the original order was very clear that all details should be made available. Then the State Bank came out with an excuse that they cannot match the data till June, which means till June they can match the data. Although some experts say that matching is impossible, but we have to take SBI's word for it, because if they say they can match it, and they will take time. Now, of course, they will disclose the code after today's order. They will disclose all the available information, including matching if they can do it, if they cannot do it immediately. But they should provide the matching also as soon as possible till June, as they had originally promised. So there is no doubt about it that they have to come clean with it. More than that, they'll be annoying the Supreme Court too much.
Sir, if we speak about transparency, while the DMK has divulged donor identities, major parties like the BJP, Congress and Trinamool have not submitted their complete information to the EC. Isn't this also, or shouldn't this ideally be the role of these political parties themselves, because they are accusing each other of not being transparent but not coming clean themselves?
Exactly, absolutely. In fact, that has been the problem even before the pre-bond period, because earlier, 70% of all donations were by cash, so we did not know what is the source. Now we do not know the source, who is the beneficiary, which is why, in the interest of transparency, which people want to know, the quid pro quo, your right to information to know, that all this should come out, and the State Bank is in the best position, because they have on their computers both the donor and the recipient. They only have to match and then make it public.
There have been some bizarre excuses. For example, the Trinamool Congress, I believe, has said that the electoral bonds were sent to their party office and were dropped in some sort of a drop box. they said that bonds were sent through messengers from various people who didn't wish to be identified. Isn't that deeply problematic as a reason that these electoral bonds were dropped in the drop box? Shouldn't you, as a responsible party, encash only those things which you knew where they came from?
Yeah, actually,
if you or I, sir, got a check in our post office, right, in our names, we didn't know who it came from, we wouldn't, as honest people, encash it, right? That's the first thing we would try to find out, is where does this come from? But evidently for our political parties, if you have a bond, then go and cash it. Where it has come from doesn't seem to matter.
Yeah, actually, the TMC is not the only party which has said that.
Yes.
I've read other parties also saying the same thing, that it was dropped in the office. We didn't know where it came from, but we encashed it. So, because that is, they were used to getting cash donations. Cash donations were coming in large numbers like that only. So, that culture in any case needed to change. But by making the bond secret, that was the basic mistake in the scheme. I have no quarrel. I have been opposing the electoral bond from day one. But at the same time, I said one good thing it did was that instead of cash transactions, they were all banking transactions. Absolutely fine. And I said, look, if you think it's such a good scheme, please retain it. Only 30-second solution. Please disclose the donor and the recipient. That was the only thing. If they had done it, all this, it should not have come to all this. That is all we needed, and that is what we are still looking for. Of course, things are coming out and bits and pieces, but we need to know the whole truth.
Assuming we do know the whole truth, because, we've been waiting for this whole truth now for some time, to what extent will it go to ending money power, which exercises itself in our elections in many ways? For example, separately during the election campaign, but if one talks about money power, this is at the heart of money power, right? I mean, corporates and others massively funding political parties and no accountability of where that money has come from. So with this verdict, to what extent will things get fixed?
Yeah. In fact, I would like you to remember that when Mr. Arun Jaitley in his budget speech introduced the scheme, his first two sentences were beautiful. He said that without transparency of political funding, free and fair elections are not possible. Mind you, free and fair elections are the basic structure of the constitution. His second statement was that for 70 years we have failed to achieve that. So we expected the third sentence to say that I am going to introduce transparency. And what did he say? That the donors want secrecy. I have been asking a question. The same donors have been donating for 70 years. They never demanded any secrecy, and they are clever enough. They were donating to all parties. Whichever party comes to power, it just didn't matter to them, because they were giving money to everyone. So, and why should donating to a political party be a criminal act? Why should anybody be scared? Donating to a political party is a legitimate thing, and the ruling party having an advantage is also very natural. So I don't know what was there to hide. It was unnecessary mystery that was created, which has caused all the confusion.
Mr. Qureshi, one final question before we go across, to our other panelists. Assuming that we get a clearer picture, maybe it'll be out by Thursday evening, by, I suppose, Friday morning or Thursday late at night. Do you believe that we are or should be approaching a situation where this conversation needs to be on whether there needs to be a cap on funding for political parties? Because
yes,
go ahead, sir.
Yes. In fact, this is one of the demands we have been making. We mean citizens, ADR, and everybody, that the law has provided for a cap on party expenditure for a good reason, to provide level playing field, to make it possible for everybody to be able to contest the election, and not only the rich. But it is ridiculous that the political parties had no cap. You can spend 95 lakhs, but your party can spend 10 crores or 20 crores on you. It makes mockery of a cap. So one thing that which needs to be done is a cap. But more than that, before as a last word, I would like to say that we should now be debating more what is the way forward.
Yeah.
Back to square one is not the best solution. And I have suggested recently in an article that create a national election fund. Donating to national election fund, nobody will be scared of any reprisal which was made as an excuse. Donate to that, and from there it should be allocated on the basis of electoral performance after the performance. Because one figure in the world which cannot be fight is the number of votes that you got. So because you may rig the election, but the number of votes that you got cannot be rigged. So on the basis of your performance, 100 rupees per vote is a rough calculation. It can be a different figure allotted from the Electoral National Election Fund. Nobody is scared. There is no need for any secrecy. It's all transparent. And 70% of the world countries, particularly European countries, are already following this practice.
Just be with us for a moment, because I just want to bring to our viewers a couple of rather unfortunate scenes, some would say, which played out in the Chief Justice's court. There was a lot of protest and opposition from some lawyers who wanted to be heard. The Chief Justice very patiently tried to tell them, wait, there is a certain process. Other judges actually got involved as well. But you know, a few of them just kept going. So let's just play out how heated things got in the Chief Justice's court. Let's just take a look at this first bit.
This gentleman doesn't constitute Rasidicator. This gentleman doesn't constitute Rasidicator.
1 second.
Yes.
1 second.
This gentleman is poet.
Please listen to me. You are not, 1 second.
I am a citizen of this country.
1 second.
Yes.
Don't shout at me.
No, I am very soft.
Please listen to me.
Yes.
This is not a hyper corner meeting, okay? You are in the court.
Yes.
You want to move an application?
No, my lord.
File an application. What I told Mr. Rodgi applies to you.
No, my lord, the question is, my lord,
There is no question you've got.
my friend has come.
Mr. Nedumbara, 1 second.
Yes.
You've got my decision as Chief Justice. We are not hearing you. If you want to file an application, move it on the email. That's the rule in this court. No further.
We will go by what you
All, please.
All right, and there was another bit which we'll play out as well. The head of the Supreme Court Bar Association, who had objected to the original verdict and wanted a correction, had written to the Chief Justice as well. In fact, the Supreme Court Bar Association had, through a resolution, distanced itself from a letter which he'd written on a signed letter on the Supreme Court Bar Association letterhead to the Chief Justice. But his hearing, in a sense, or what he had to say, also came up in the Chief Justice's court. Here is what the Chief Justice told the lawyer, Mr. Agarwala.
I will not disturb Lordship.
Mr. Agarwala, apart from being a senior counsel, you are the president of the SCBA.
Yeah.
You should know the procedure. You have written a letter to me asking me to invoke my suo motu jurisdiction.
Only that.
These are all publicity-oriented stunts. We will not permit it.
Whatever Lordship will feel better.
Mr. Agarwala, please keep it at that. I may have to say something more, which will be perhaps a little distasteful. Please close it.
All right, well, joining us now, General Anil Verma. He's the head of the Association for Democratic Reform. Swati Malik, she's an advocate and spokesperson of the Congress Party. Tuhin Sinha of the BJP. Vinny Dhanda is an advocate in the Supreme Court. Thank you all very much for being with us. General Verma, I think the question which people in the country want to know, first and foremost, by when will there be clarity on electoral bonds, and who gained, which party gained, from which donor, and how much?
Vishnu, I think once the unique identification numbers are disclosed, I suppose people will do the matching, and then the details should come out in a couple of days. People are already working on it. But right now, there is no clarity in this situation. Some of the parties have suo motu disclosed the details of the donors which they have received, some have not. And only once this matching is done and it is verified, then the exact picture will emerge.
General Verma, that alphanumeric code is the missing link, right? There is nothing else that you require to unearth this information?
I don't think so, because all the other details have already been given as per the Supreme Court directions. Of course, the SBI was pushed into giving it.
Do you see that as General Verma, as being deeply unfortunate that despite very clear orders, some would suggest, of the Supreme Court, it needed the Chief Justice to say that every aspect of this needs to be revealed. Let there be no misunderstanding or misapprehension. In fact, I've got his quote on what he said. What the Chief Justice actually said was interesting, and I'll read that. The State Bank of India's attitude seems to be, you tell us what to disclose, we will disclose. That doesn't seem to be fair. When we say all details, it includes all conceivable details. Is it in a sense unfortunate that despite an order, then an appeal, and now it had to come up once again in court, that the State Bank of India didn't provide the data which it had to in the first place?
Yeah, it is unfortunate. Once an order is given, I mean, you cannot keep saying that we've not understood the order. That is the sense we were getting once today when listening to Harish Salve. He's supposed to be one of the best lawyers, but if you say that we did not understand the judgment, wherein the word inclusive and included and including was very clearly specified by the Chief Justice, even in the last hearing. So in spite of that, if they say we've not really understood, then it's a sorry state of affairs, I would say.
Swati Malik, the Congress party keeps talking about transparency, but then why don't you voluntarily, like the DMK, reveal your list of donors? Why does it have to come through the State Bank of India?
Vishnu, thank you for asking this very fair question, because I'm sure most of your viewers are also asking and thinking the same thing. But I must just surprise your viewers through you, because I'm quite sure you are already aware of it, is that the Congress party accounts are frozen right now. The matter is sub judice. There's the income tax matter going on, and that is the reason we are not able to access our accounts. And that is the reason we've not been able to give out the details so far. But one more thing I want to tell out here is that we've already disclosed all of this to the government. The SBI knows it all. So that's how it comes back to the central government, comes back to the SBI rather, to disclose it for us also. We are in this, we are in this position today where we can't access our accounts. And not many people are aware of this.
No, but Swati, you have no record of your donors other than by looking at your accounts.
There is a mixed, we also see when we give something before the court, when we make a statement before the court or before the election commission, we have to be very sure of what we give in. In case we have to cross-check, and it's not just the record that is already there. We can't just give, the assumed or, this is what we think, but tomorrow if something new comes up to our account, again, we might be held in contempt or we might be held dishonest that time. So we want to be very sure about it.
Okay. Tuhin Sinha, again, same question to you. Now that the court has ruled and the words of the Chief Justice, the 5-judge bench are absolutely clear, why doesn't the BJP come out with this detail? I know principally the problems and the disagreement the BJP has had, but in light of this verdict, why wait for the SBI to give codes when you've got it with you, the data?
Well, good evening, Vishnu. Good evening, everybody. The matter is sub judice. It is between SBI and the Honorable Supreme Court. So if whatever the court instructs, the SBI will have to go ahead and do it. I don't think the BJP has anything to hide, because if you look at the proportion of donations received by BJP through electoral bonds, it is very much in proportion to the number of members of parliament we have. It is parties like TMC and DMK which have a lot more to answer. For example, every time a raid was conducted at the premises of Future Gaming, it's bizarre that the donations were going to DMK. So I think, the smaller parties like TMC, which have got nearly 14 to 15% for a mere 23 to 24 members of parliament, I think they are the ones who need to explain. We strongly believe that the system is way better than the cash, unnamed cash which was coming in, the Hawala money which was coming in, which Congress obviously enjoyed. It is a marked improvement over the trust, the election trust, which the reform which they had brought in 2010 very half-heartedly, which again kept the donors anonymous.
No, but Swati, how would you respond to that point that proportionately, just assuming that, the BJP quite clearly the largest beneficiary, but the point Tuhin makes is proportionately they've had the largest number of seats, and he uses that word proportionate. Do you accept that?
No, Vishnu. Look at the conduct of the of the BJP. Look at the list that has been given. For example, given of Future Gaming itself in 2022, they were raided, and suddenly next day itself, or within a month, there was a contribution of 65 crores to the BJP. And thereafter, another 2023, again they were rated by IT. Again, they contributed 100 crore to BJP. So when you talk about the proportion, what are they what sort of proportion is talking about? Because look at the numbers and look at the way it's all being carried out. It's become extortion now, and I'm sure I don't need to give you the data, but in case you wanted, Vishnu, there's Future Gaming, there is Mega Engineers, there is Dr. Reddy, for example, there is APCO Infra. All these, except for Mega Engineers, who've already donated money through electoral bonds for the BJP, and they have gotten thousands of crores of projects. For the other APCO Infra, 10th of January 2022, there's an electoral bond. There's a ED raid.
Right. So basically, you're basically trying to draw that link.
Absolutely.
Right.
It's not a coincidence. It's not a coincidence with one or two companies. Out of 30 companies, 23 are the ones who've been raided, and within the same month or a few days, they have contributed. So
Tuhin, would you like to respond to that?
Price for guessing out there who was that contributed to.
Tuhin, are corporate buying out the charges again? That's the allegation.
Gaming. Yes. Future Gaming has contributed a total of 528 crores to DMK, 80% of the total amount received by them. And very strangely, it seems to be immediately in four installments after every raid. So, I think DMK as a small regional player has received far greater amount from the concerned company, which the Congress spokesperson is mentioning. I think we need to take a more practical view.
No, but Tuhin, the point that she's making,
the UPA government has brought in 2011.
No, but Tuhin, just bear with me. The point that she is trying to make is that while in the case of some of these smaller parties, there is evidence and there is knowledge of which corporate has actually paid a party, there is a sense that it's been done to get off certain cases. So is that what this is all about, that companies which find themselves under investigation are paying off the government in power in a state
I think
in order to prevent investigations?
I think, Vishnu, the moot question over here is that did the investigation stop after the donation, or did the investigation go on? If the investigation went on, clearly it did not have a link. These are assumptions which the opposition is drawing, but I think, if you purely look at the proportion of donations, I think we are much more transparent, of which we have much less to fear than parties like TMC and DMK. And Congress obviously has got less than TMC because Congress has no credibility. I think that also is something Congress should ponder over.
Okay.
In terms of, whoever has some credibility gets more donation. TMC obviously is an exception where TMC gets.
Okay, but I just wanted to quickly go across to Vineet Dhanda, who's been waiting. He's an advocate in the Supreme Court. One of the points mentioned by Harish Salve is that as a result of this judgment, the voter knowing is one thing, but this might result in endless PILs with people saying investigate this and investigate that, and asking the Chief Justice of India, look, this is a judgment that has been passed, but was it ever the intention of the court to get into a situation where on the basis of this judgment there would be endless PILs? Do you agree with what Mr. Salve had to say?
Oh, good evening, Vishnu. I agree to part of it because once the information is out in public, like the Congress party is saying that once the raids were done and the donations came, they are forgetting one thing: the citizen of this country or big corporate houses do donate to development works also. There is a party which could not even construct the inner roads inside Amethi and dare to go to Wayandan for fighting Lok Sabha elections. A party which has been doing good job since past 10 years. So they'll get donations. It is impliedly understood. But once the information is out, there are certain people who will hound these donators as to why you gave. Like, if anybody has donated, a corporate house has donated, you have donated to the party in power and you got certain projects. So they'll try to do the witch hunt and correlate and make unfounded allegations, which are inappropriate. So there is a tendency.
No, but how do you assume that these are unfounded allegations if the data actually comes out and allegations are made, we can all judge the veracity of or the credibility of these allegations, no? So shouldn't we wait for that?
One thing is very important, with due respect to you. Every party is getting donations. Some parties are getting smaller donations. Some parties are getting higher donations. But witch hunt is regarding, oh, you got this project, rather Adani got this project, Ambani got this project. They are the biggest corporates in the country. They will make certain donations to the party. And I am again saying, as a citizen, party which gets highest donation, it's on the basis of merits also. 10 years our country has gone from bottom till top. We are among top 3 countries in the world. And our leader of the country, Honorable Prime Minister, is the topmost leader in the world. We have to understand this thing, that there can be a bro beating, there can be a nagging behavior on the part of opposite parties. So we have to make a check and balance. And Honorable Supreme Court is empowered and efficient to do that.
Okay.
Honorable Chief Justice pointed that out.
Okay, in fact, one of the points, and I'm going to wrap this up, when the Chief Justice was asked about problems which political parties may potentially face as a result of this judgment and the way it's being played out in social media with so many questions being asked, the Chief Justice actually said something. And as I end this debate, I'll just like to read out that quote. He said, "As judges, we are governed by the rule of law. We work as per the Constitution. As judges, we are also discussed in social media. But as an institution, our shoulders are broad enough to deal with social media commentary." The point is, are our political parties, do they have shoulders broad enough to deal with the potential outcome of this data actually emerging? I'd like to thank you all very much for being with us. We're going to quickly take a break at this stage. In fact, before that, we're going to move on to our next big focus. After his landslide win in the presidential election in Russia, what many say was a foregone conclusion, Vladimir Putin has raised the spectre of World War III as ties between Russia and the West plummet to the deepest crisis since the 1962 Cuban Missile Crisis. Putin has repeatedly warned that the use of nuclear weapons is not off the table if Russia is threatened. These comments come at a time when the French president recently said that he couldn't rule out the deployment of French soldiers in Ukraine.
करीब 88% वोटों के साथ राष्ट्रपति पुतिन को मिली जीत के जरिए क्रेमलिन दुनिया को और खासतौर पे पश्चिमी देशों को ये जताने की कोशिश में है कि तकरीबन पूरा रूस जो है वो मजबूती के साथ राष्ट्रपति पुतिन के पीछे खड़ा है और इसके जरिए पुतिन जो है वो अपनी ताकत का एहसास भी दुनिया के देशों को कराना चाहते हैं। हालांकि अमेरिका, यूके, पोलैंड और जर्मनी जैसे जो देश हैं उन्होंने लगातार सवाल उठाए हैं। जिस तरीके से वोटिंग हुई है, जिस तरीके से चुनाव हुए हैं, उनका ये कहना है कि ये न तो फ्री है न फेयर है और कई तरह के सेंसरशिप के बीच जो है वो चुनाव कराए गए हैं। पहली बार नावाल्नी का नाम लिया राष्ट्रपति पुतिन ने अपनी विक्ट्री स्पीच के दौरान और ये कहा कि स्वाप की डील जो है उन्होंने तय कर रखी थी, लेकिन इस बीच जो है नावाल्नी की जो मौत है वो हो गई। एक और अहम बात है कि उन्होंने चेतावनी दी है कि नेटो ने अगर रूस के आसपास अपनी गतिविधियों को बंद नहीं किया तो तीसरा विश्व युद्ध जो है वो हो सकता है। तो एक और छठे टर्म के लिए चुने जाने के बाद पुतिन ने अपनी जो मंशा है और अपनी जो ताकत है उसको दिखाने की कोशिश की है और जब मई में वो शपथ ग्रहण लेंगे, उनका अगला कार्यकाल जब शुरू होगा और 30 तक जब वो अपना कार्यकाल पूरा करेंगे तो उसके बाद वो स्टालिन के उस रिकॉर्ड को तोड़ देंगे और रूस के इतिहास में सबसे लंबे समय तक शासन करने वाले एक शासक के तौर पे अपना नाम जो है वो दर्ज करा लेंगे।
The outcome was never in doubt. After 3 days of voting, Russian President Vladimir Putin has secured another term after winning a whopping 87% of the vote, according to Russia's Central Election Commission. All set to extend his nearly quarter-century rule for another 6 years, Putin stands to overtake Stalin as the longest-serving leader for more than 200 years. Immediately after the victory, Putin warned the West that a direct conflict between Russia and the US-led NATO would mean World War III was just a step away.
Я думаю, что все возможно в современном мире, но я уже говорил, и это понятно для всех, что это будет в одном шаге от полномасштабной Третьей мировой войны. Думаю, что в этом вряд ли кто-нибудь заинтересован.
The Russian leader did not face any credible competition as there were only 3 token rivals. While the Communist Party candidate Nikolai Kharitonov collected a little more than 4% of the vote, other candidates garnered even less. Kharitonov even praised Putin ahead of the election. Putin's fiercest political foe, Alexei Navalny, died in an Arctic prison last month. Other critics are either in jail or in exile.
After the result, President Putin thanked voters and told them that he would prioritize resolving tasks associated with Russia's special military operation, in his words.
The US and its allies condemned the Russian election, while the US said the vote was obviously not free nor fair. Ukraine's President Zelensky said Putin was sick with power and is doing everything to rule forever. With Uma Shankar Singh in Moscow, Vishal Vivek for NDTV.
Well, frightening remarks over there by the Russian president, warning of World War III. Joining us now, Fred Ware, Russian affairs expert, Glenn Carl, former Deputy National Intelligence Officer for Transnational Threats in the CIA. He's been a career officer there. Oleksiy Goncharenko, president of the PACE Committee on Migration, Refugees and Displaced People, and a Ukrainian MP also with us, and Ambassador Dilip Sinha. Glenn Carl, let me come to you first. It's not the first time that we've heard Vladimir Putin make threats about the use of nuclear weapons, but now he's ratcheted it up a little bit further and he's talking about World War III. Are these only words, or is there a sense that what he could be saying has an element of credibility?
Well, both statements are true. It's really not a change at all in either the current situation, the status of the war in Ukraine, tensions with NATO or the United States, or in Russian doctrine. It's a restatement of what has always been the case. And there's always been fear since the invention of nuclear weapons of a nuclear war that would be the worst catastrophe in human history. So I'm less alarmed. I'm not particularly alarmed by Putin sort of shaking this chess piece as a reminder in response to, in particular, President Macron, France's comments, and as a warning. But this has always been the case. Only a fool is not conscious that a clash between Russia and NATO, meaning the United States, would risk nuclear war, but neither side would seek to do it, and I see no particular change. It's a useful statement from his perspective to make, and has real substance in the sense that the supposed election doesn't. And we've done a disservice to all of ourselves by even spending time talking about what really is just the coronation of a dictator. But the nuclear statements don't particularly alarm me. No change.
Oleksiy Goncharenko, the question which we've been asking, the whole world has been asking, is how does this conflict actually end? More than 2 years into this conflict, does Ukraine have any clear answers? The situation is so much more difficult for Ukraine over the last couple of months. A lot of ammunition, weapons which you are seeking from the West have not come in. The loss of life is huge on both sides. What is the way to end this?
There is a very, hello, first of all, and there is a very clear path to end this. Russia just needs to go out from Ukraine, restore international order, international law, and that's all. That's a very easy way to end everything. Ukraine never started anything. It was Russia which attacked us, absolutely unjustified, and they can easily stop it. If Russia will not do this, and if Russia will continue this war will continue. And for how long, I can't tell you. Yes, you are saying about problems with our supply of weaponry. Yesterday we have problem with a package from United States of America. But even without this, we have enough support from our allies, other allies, both from European countries and not only. And with all Russian military might, their gains are very, very small. For example, their gain during last half year is a town with a population 30,000 people. On Indian measures, I think it's not even a village. That's all that gain they have. but at the same time, they lost significant part of their Black Sea fleet in the Black Sea, and with a huge number of people which are killed in action during their attacks. So we can't say that this war goes the way Russia wanted it to go. I just want to remind you, 2 years ago, Putin was claiming that they would take Kiev in several days or maybe weeks.
Yes.
Now it's more than 2 years, and they didn't take any one regional center, even regional center in Ukraine. No one really big city is taken by Russia. But yes, it is a very painful war, and unfortunately, it continues because Putin is a crazy tyrant who thinks that he can do whatever he wants.
Fred Ware, is there a sense that do people that you speak to in Russia seriously believe that Putin can indefinitely sustain this conflict? Because the extent of the losses that the Russian armed forces have taken, both in terms of soldiers and in terms of machinery, if there is Western aid, more of it that comes in, and that almost seems inevitable, it's a question of when, how much longer can he actually sustain this himself?
I think the sense in Moscow is that they're just getting started. The Russian war economy is only now, in the past year, ramped up to a war footing. By even what open sources we can see that industry, the former Soviet military-industrial complex, is reviving. That's not good news for anybody, and especially for Russia. But as far as the war is concerned, Russia's ability to obtain materiel is increasing. They are getting a lot of perhaps things like artillery shells from North Korea, drones from Iran. But basically, Russian industry was greatly underestimated from the beginning of this war. And their ability to pay for it, it's not Soviet methods, it's not central planning and command. It's military Keynesianism. They're spending, they're giving state orders to private industry to produce dual purpose and military goods, and it's working. I think that's by all accounts. I read the Russian media, yes I do, but I also read the New York Times and the Washington Post, and I think that the general consensus is that, for better or for worse, the Russians are gaining the initiative on the battlefield. Yes, they're suffering terrible losses, but I think the Ukrainian side is as well. And Russia has a much deeper pockets and much deeper reserves of manpower than Ukraine does. Short of NATO intervention, I'm afraid that the war will end in Russia's favor.
Yep. Ambassador Sinha, the fact of the matter is Putin's biggest concern is an expansion of NATO. The entry of Ukraine potentially into NATO, other states over there into NATO. That doesn't seem to be a realistic sort of situation immediately. There is nothing imperative about an expansion of NATO presently. Is this assuming what I'm saying is correct, what is this war really about as far as Putin is concerned?
Well, Putin's war aims have not been clearly spelled out. He started the war 2 years ago by trying to capture Kyiv, in which he failed. Thereafter, he concentrated on the eastern part and took over the Donbass region, and then has been trying to make as much progress as he can. He's made some progress in the last 2 months, but otherwise the war is currently in a stalemate. Now, as far as the expansion of NATO is concerned, Putin's invasion has succeeded in getting Finland into NATO. So the idea that NATO would have a long border with Russia has now been realized by Putin, and now Sweden is going to join NATO. So you have a situation where Putin's invasion has actually backfired on him in that NATO has expanded, and if as and when the war ends, or if Ukraine is threatened, if Kyiv itself is threatened, then you may actually have NATO entering the war. You've heard Macron saying that. Scholz at the moment is hesitant. Of course, there is the American angle, because the Republicans have held up the American aid, and if Trump comes, then we don't know what's going to happen. That would be a disaster for Ukraine. But the European powers are stepping in, and it will not certainly be easy for Putin to make rapid progress in threatening the rest of Ukraine. He's so far got the eastern part, and he has to be content with that. That is the only way forward in case you want to have peace in the region.
Yeah.
But if he threatens Ukraine's existence, then I'm afraid he will realize his dream of having a World War III.
Yeah. Mr. Goncharenko, what is the ground situation in places like Avdiivka? Bakhmut, we know, was lost to the Russians some time back. Even in further south in Robotny, the situation has been moving back and forth. Is there a real worry that in Ukraine that the Russian ground forces are now making territorial gains which they hadn't previously been able to do? Is that your worry now?
Definitely, we are worried about this and concerned. Definitely, you're right that Russian forces, they have some gains. But again, if to take the general picture, if to take what had happened 2 years ago when a full-scale invasion started, we liberated half of what Russia took at the beginning of the invasion. Now the dynamics is not in our side, but it's really not in Russian side too. It really looks more like a stalemate. Speaking about on whom the time works, first of all, the level of Ukrainian and Russian losses is uncomparable. Russian losses are much, much higher according to all estimation, including independent by the foreign different think tanks. And the second thing, Russian economy, don't forget this, Russian economy is just $1.5 trillion, and the economy of Ukrainian allies is $50 trillion. So Russian economy is very, very small in comparison with the economy of the countries which support Ukraine. And it's not only the West, we also have supporters from other parts of the world too. So I think that in long-term perspective, Russia is doomed. And what Putin did to Russia, I think this will be the end of this. By the way, the last colonial empire in Europe, they will disappear from the map of the world. Like before, Russian Empire disappeared, then Soviet Union disappeared. Now it's time for Russian Federation to disappear. But when it will happen, how many years will it take? Well, it can happen tomorrow, like we saw last year when it was a mutiny of Prigozhin and Wagner Group in Moscow. Or it will take 10 years more of this rotting under Putin. It's hard for me to say, but it will definitely happen. I don't think that time works on Putin, and I don't think that he even believes in this. Yes, he tries to show some kind of confidence, but in reality, once again, what is his big gain during these 2 years of war and big part of Russian economy sacrificed and hundreds of thousands of Russian people sacrificed?
Right.
What are the gains which he received?
All right, well, we'll wrap that up over here. Thank you all very much for being with us. At more than 2 years into the war, no signs of an end, and the rhetoric becoming even more frightening, with the Russian president talking about World War III as well. We'll take a short break up after that. From a story of despair to a story of real hope, our newsmaker on the program, the Israeli Nobel Prize winner Ada Yonath, who won the 2009 award for chemistry for a pioneering work on the structure of ribosomes. That's coming up next. Welcome back. Our newsmaker on the program, the Israeli Nobel Prize winner Ada Yonath, joins us. She's won the 2009 award for chemistry along with Venki Ramakrishnan for her pioneering work on the structure of ribosomes. What are ribosomes? They're a key part of the machinery of our cells. Her work has helped prove the efficacy of antibiotics, and that's been absolutely remarkable. She's the first woman from the Middle East to win the Nobel in chemistry and the first woman from the Middle East to win a Nobel in sciences. Ada Yonath, it is a real honor to be speaking to you. Thank you very much. Ma'am, you're best known for your pioneering work on ribosomes. For the benefit of those watching this interview, can you tell us how ribosomes are a key part of the machinery in our cells?
Ribosomes are translating the genetic information into the workers of life, which are called proteins. So each person has a lot of genes. Each gene is coding for a specific protein that is doing a specific task in life. Ribosomes work the same way or almost the same way in all creatures, in bacteria, in flowers, in trees, in human beings, in animals. They read or they can translate the genetic code into the output, and stopping their work is essentially stopping life. That's the way the antibiotics are functioning. So each antibiotic has a ribosome that she knows or can attack, and what we are trying to do is to stop this attack on the ribosome. Because if the ribosomes don't work, there are not enough proteins or not proteins at all, which is actually a very serious disease or even death.
Ma'am, a lot of your work looks at ribosomal crystallography, something which you pioneered. How was this a line of research that really got you interested several decades back, and you pioneered it, as I said? And how did you overcome the initial skepticism over its merits?
Oh, that's a very long story.
Give us the short answer.
Could I overcome? But in a few sentences, the problem was understanding the structure of ribosomes and how they function. The structure was required. Ribosomes are very complicated and they have many components, and each component had to stay exactly in the correct position so the second one can be connected or disconnected to it, and they are not stable. It means as long as they work, they are fantastic. But when you take them out in order to determine how they work or the structure, they fall apart. And very many excellent scientists try to keep them in structure, in steady structure, and failed because they fall apart within a few hours or maybe a few days, depending which ones, when they don't work. They can maintain their functional structure as long as they are functioning. How did I overcome it? I read about bears that go to sleep in the beginning of the winter in the North Pole, and that the ribosomes become a very densely packed within their cells, because as far as I understood it, bears are going to sleep in the beginning of the winter. They hardly function. It means they hardly use their ribosomes. But when they get up in the winter, in the spring, they need to function. And if they just stay as they are, the ribosomes will fall apart and they won't be able to be alive and to do what bears are doing in order to live. So when I thought that nature is so clever to pack the ribosomes so they won't fall apart, I connected a very dense packing and very strong packing with staying alive. It means not falling apart. But I didn't really want to go to the North Pole and catch bears in the beginning of the winter, kill them and study how their ribosomes function. I looked for other systems when there are stresses in life, like winter is a threat for the bears. And in Israel there is a sea, or small sea, a lake, called the Dead Sea.
Yes.
It means the salt concentration is very, very high. So I thought this is also a stressful environment, and I should take advantage of it. That's the way I started. Later on, not only me, but others also were able to find other stressful conditions for life, and that's the way we determined the first structures of ribosomes. Later on, we learned how to change the conditions in the test tube in order to produce crystals. So this was the beginning of my work.
Ma'am, you were the first woman in 45 years to win the Nobel in chemistry, the first woman from the Middle East to win a Nobel in sciences, as I understand it. Can you tell us about how your own interest in science grew? How did it all start?
It had nothing to do with my gender. I was just curious, and I like to understand everything. The fact that not many females were interested or deeply interested in science, this was because women have also other things, other duties in life which are very, very important. Otherwise we won't be alive if the women would not take care of us. So that's more or less the story.
It's been wonderful speaking to you, and welcome to India. Thank you very much indeed for joining us and speaking to us. Thanks very much, ma'am. That's it then on this program, this edition of Left, Right and Centre. We'll be back tomorrow. Till then, good night.